If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now. And if you are already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. Seems every week I get a few people messaging me telling me that they've been unsubscribed without their knowledge. And of course, be sure to give the video a like. The white supremacists hate that. Now, that said, as I've always told you, the white media doesn't exist for the sake of promoting black people's interest. It exists for the sake of promoting white supremacy's interest. That is the white media's purpose. It is here to make sure that whenever white supremacy is trying to run roughshod over black people, there's a mouthpiece that sanitizes it and justifies it and tells everybody why it's okay. But what happens when the official mouthpiece for established white power loses its efficiency and efficacy? What happens when not so many people are listening? Well, what the white media does is it tries to raise even more noise. It does the same thing, just more of it. But even so, if you want to know how effective we've been at promoting tangibles, Politico gave you a little bit of a notice that they do indeed hear what's been going on in the black media. A little over a month ago, Politico put up a story about how Joe Biden's got a big problem with young black voters. They said exactly what it is that Joe Biden's been denying, what roly-poly's dumb behind has been denying, what Joy Reid and the rest of the black boule mouthpieces have been denying. Oh, it's the older black voters that matter. Remember when roly-poly said that? Y'all need to worry about these young black voters. Y'all need to be worried about these older ones. The young ones don't turn out to vote anyway. The older black voters, that's where it's at. Well, Politico says no, that's not where it's at. What a surprise. The oldest demographic of black people, the 65 to dead demo, who is shrinking every day. There's a lot of things that people are going to be saying about the older black vote, the black baby boomer vote. But the one thing that they're not going to be saying is that there's going to be more black baby boomers in the future. Their numbers are only going to decline. They're not going to increase. Whose numbers are increasing, however, are the young black voters, particularly the ones who are disengaged from this political fraud calling itself an electoral system. Politico's headline, How Young Black Voters Could Break Biden, and Why Democrats Are Worried. Oh, what a very different tone than what we've been hearing up until now, because up until now, apparently, Biden had it all in one sock. You know, the same way that Michael Bloomberg had it all in one sock. Remember that? The white media spent, or rather wasted, a lot of time putting forward their lie that black voters don't seem to be bothered by Bloomberg's policy on stop and frisk when he was mayor of New York. Bloomberg's support for stop and frisk doesn't seem to be hurting him with black voters. And then Bloomberg made the mistake of actually going to black voters. I guess he figured if he didn't do it in New York, he'd be safe. He'd go down to Alabama, where I guess he figured not too many black folks would have heard about his record. Not too many of them would be too upset with him. Of course, he guessed wrong. There were plenty of black folks at Brown Chapel AME Church in Selma who got up in the middle of his little speech and turned their backs on him. And as soon as that happened, the same white media who had spent weeks talking about how Bloomberg's stop and frisk policy isn't hurting him with black voters and how he had all this black support from bootlicks like the mayor of Houston and others, all of a sudden, the same white media was going, whoops, Bloomberg's got a huge problem. Next day, Bloomberg throws in the towel, says, I quit. Answer for it. So what this tells you, just another reminder, the white media is not and has never been in the business of informing your opinion. They've been in the business of controlling your opinion. They've been in the business of dictating to you what to think with carefully crafted lies, but the lies are crumbling before reality. And that brings us to the looming 2020 election and Joe Biden's black credibility gap. The fact that black voters are simply looking at him and going, no, we ain't rolling with that. Politico put up their story, and one of the things that they pointed out was that there are three major crises going on. One that happens to revolve around police brutality, another one around coronavirus, and the third around the economic downturn. But for the black community, there's all three of these things have always been a problem. Healthcare, whether it's from COVID, the flu, cancer, heart attacks, or anything else, have always been a perennial problem for black people. We had huge problems with healthcare long before COVID. Economic downturn, hell, we hadn't even noticed. Maybe that's because black people are disproportionately represented among quote unquote frontline workers. That's because black people have been left out of the information economy. Jobs for the black people who have them are jobs that usually cannot be digitized, cannot be done over the internet, and hence shelter in is not any sort of option for black people in America. And of course, the police, of which the less said, the better. But here they are pointing out at the center of all three crises are black Americans. Okay, so far they've started off the article more or less on point. But of course, this is a white media outlet, so they have to go ahead and sprinkle some BS on it. Because the goal, of course, is to give room to the Democrats to say, well, if we do something for black people, we have to do something for everyone. Oh, we'll sit there and say black people happen to have problems that need addressing, but as soon as we do, we use that as a gateway to try to shoehorn everybody else into the conversation so they can continue the same old policy of, well, black people have an issue, so everybody should get something. And if there's anything left over, we'll give everybody something else a second time. And if there's still anything left after that, black people might get some of it, maybe. But the Politico article goes on to say that Joe Biden's struggling to connect with young voters, particularly those of color. There's the gate, that's the doorway for it. According to public and private polling, a serious problem for the former vice president that started during the presidential primary. Now, the presidential primary was way before this whole COVID thing started. Oh, what they're acknowledging is, yeah, this black media, they've been giving Joe Biden that work. And he hasn't been able to trot out, or rather waddle out, Simone Mammy Sanders to go ahead and mammy-splain for him. That little con game isn't working. Seems the white media thinks that Simone Sanders is damaged goods, along with Karine Jean-Pierre. Yeah, you're not going to see either one of their names in this Politico article. The Democrats understand they got a huge problem with the black community, and it's being led by black men. Black women are on board too, and they're trying to figure out, how do we shatter this black political unity? We got to figure out how to shatter this black political solidarity. So what they're going to try to do, and this article is going to be an example of that. On the one hand, they're going to be admitting to what the problem is, and on the other hand, they're going to be showing you exactly what their strategy is to try to undermine us. Now, the article goes on to say the difference maker for Democrats in November isn't whether Donald Trump will peel off a small proportion of black men as he's trying to do, but whether Biden can persuade young black voters in battleground states not to sit out the election. There you have it. There you have it. Yeah, the problem isn't whether or not Donald Trump can get black support, it's whether or not Biden can. That's the problem. It ain't a matter of black people champing at the bit to vote for Trump. It's a matter of they damn sure don't want to be voting for Biden. And no matter how many black bootlicks and how many dependable, trustworthy boule Negroes they trot out, it isn't solving that problem. Black people are not overlooking it. And the main fear that they have beyond that is not merely that black people are rejecting Joe Biden. The problem happens to be why they're doing it. And the fact that black folks are making it known this is not a one election thing. This is the new normal. Now, according to a guy called Brandon Snyder, who's the executive director of Detroit Action, and be careful of those names, they like to use names that are meant to be evocative of black people, and then you find a whole bunch of non-blacks running around. But he says that I'm worried that a lot of our first-time voters, and a lot of them are young voters, are going to completely opt out of the system. I've been telling you this for a year now. Or at least I've been talking about it for years off and on, but starting last August with my video, one of the early videos on this channel, talking about how disengaging from the voting process happens to be a threat to the system, The U.S. has used this strategy in countries around the world because when people are not voting, that means they're getting ready to revolt. You can tell when an oppressive system happens to have everyone under control because everybody buys into the idea that if they just play the game by the oppressor's rules, somehow that's going to change things. You got a scheme set up to make sure you never get what it is that you want or need, but if you just keep doing the same thing that the system tells you to do, somehow you'll get a different result. But when people disengage, that's not going to stop them from fighting for what's theirs. In fact, that's usually the first sign that they're about to intensify their efforts. But they're not doing it by the system's rules. And you've seen for the last month and a half exactly why that is a threat to the system. Oh, people are looking to change, all right. They're looking for change, but they're not looking to get it through the ballot box. And when that happens, that means that people have completely and thoroughly lost any and all confidence in the system, in the system's institutions. And how do you get people back on board? Well, first of all, you got to get them re-engaged with the idea that if they just go back to the same old political electoral treadmill, show up on election day, vote for one of these pre-canned, pre-selected tools of white supremacy, oh, something will happen. Yeah, but not anything good. Now, the article continues to say that Cornell Belcher, a Democratic pollster who worked on Obama's campaigns, called the protests an opportunity to reconnect and re-engage this cynical and disillusioned segment of the electorate. Now, look at the wording that he uses. Cynical and disillusioned. He's right about the disillusioned, but cynical? Cynical is what you call, say, a Democrat who passes a number of laws geared toward mass incarcerating black people, and then that person turns around and says, well, it was these black preachers who wanted me to do that. Hey, Bill, that's what you said to say, right? Bill, you said that for Hillary 4 years ago. How'd that work out? Well, Joe, it didn't work out too well. Not sure if you want to use that talking point. Well, damn it, Bill. It's the only line we've got. All right, then if you say that, that's what we're going to do. That's a cynical person. That's cynical. But just goes to show you, these scumbags can't even talk about the very people who they allegedly are trying to get back on board without insulting us. Oh, this is an opportunity to reconnect and re-engage, but notice that he doesn't say an opportunity to obey. He doesn't say that this is an opportunity to address their concerns. He just says reconnect and re-engage. You know what reconnection and re-engagement means? If Massa leaves the plantation for a few weeks and the slaves start to get a little bit rowdy, Massa has a couple of revolts on his hands. He's got to come back and calm the little darkies down. See, he can reconnect and re-engage, but he's not going to be obeying them. They're going to be obeying him. And this is the mentality at work. Cynical? No, those young people in the streets are not cynical. Those young people in the streets are not jaded. They've had their eyes opened. That's what's happened here. It is the white supremacist tools like Joe Biden and Cornell Belcher. They're the cynical ones. But this Belcher character warned that for Democrats, young black men were the most problematic for the party, since that group's participation dropped the most from 2012 to 2016. Now think about that. This guy's taking direct aim at black men in particular. I guess nobody's told him that a number of black women are also just as fed up. Now maybe the numbers of black women have not gravitated in the same direction as black men as quickly, but it's happening. And pretending that it's not, that's not going to help you. Acting like, oh, well, this is just a problem with young black men. They admit in the article that the problem's bigger than just young black men. But these are kind of feel-good lies they got to tell themselves so that they don't pee their pants and crap their britches all at once. But look what he says. Young black men were the most problematic for the party. Really? Well, you don't really want the votes of a bunch of cynical problems, do you? People who are cynical and problematic, you don't really want those votes, do you? But of course, this is not about black votes. This is about black people confirming that they're back on the treadmill. Look at how much political and legislative progress has been made in the last month and a half without a single ballot being cast. Without a single election having been held. Without a single candidate of any political affiliation, even remotely acceptable to us, having been put into office. Didn't have to get anybody elected to get things done. Didn't have to get any legislation passed to get things done. You show that these streets get hot and all of a sudden the politicians, when they see that, they're going to be coming to your doggone house to address these things. They're not going to the House of Representatives. They're going to the politicians and the police and the judges' houses. Then all of a sudden, you know what? We've had a chance to rethink this. We can all get behind this. Yeah, because the problem is they do not want the people who are mad as hell about the fact that they're being picked off and being ground into the dust to decide that they're going to be taking their grievances directly to the government officials and the thugs with badges' homes. They do not want to be touched by the power of the people. But they think that black men are leading the way, and they are right. Black men are leading the way on this. And black women happen to be with us as well. And this is what scares them. The very dynamic that they have been trying to find a way to forestall and postpone and undermine for 150 years. Now it's here in their faces. It hasn't stopped. It's just continued. Speaking of continue, the piece goes on to say Democratic margins among African Americans, not just African American men. It says African Americans dropped 3 percentage points from 2016 to 2018. Now, think about that. 2016 to 2018. That means since Trump has been in office, Democratic margins among black people has gone down. But what they've pointed out is this is not because black people are so excited about Trump. It's not because Trump's gaining black support. It's because the Democrats are losing that black support. Black people are disengaging in period. And they had to admit that. Quote, Biden will no doubt win a large majority of black voters, at least 9 in 10 of whom have voted for Democrats in recent elections. Democratic pollsters said the party should worry less about Trump winning over black men and more about those who are ambivalent about Biden and the party. That's a hell of an admission now, isn't it? The people who are giving the Democrats their so-called sage wisdom, the individuals who are giving the Democrats their political expertise, what they're saying is you shouldn't be worrying so much about Trump getting black votes as much as the fact that you're not going to be getting them. Trump won't be getting those black votes, but you won't be getting them either. And that's the reason why the Democrats are trying all sorts of pathetic little stunts, trying to figure out, is there any way that we can do an end run around black people's tangibles? Is there any way that we can try to find a way to reassert our control over the black mind and get black people back under the thumb of the controlled opposition as opposed to the direct opposition? Is there any way we can get them back on board? I know. We'll go to Georgia and you know how screwed up those Negroes are out there, and we'll go ahead and take that joke, that dysfunctional sewer of a group out there. We'll go ahead and try to find a way to get them toeing the line. They're pretty gullible. They're pretty dumb, right? Well, they may not be as dumb as you think, because a lot of them have been listening to the black media and getting their minds right. But just to give you a window into what the Democrats' cynical strategy is, you have something calling itself the New Georgia Project. Again, how many these are not even black organizations. I told you about that. Black PAC and all these other things. These are just inventions of white moneyed interests. They get some Negro to be their front person, and they're just going to be that puppet doing their bidding. So between New Georgia Project and this Detroit Action, you see how they use those names, you know? They don't put Democrat on there. They want to make it something where black people will be, oh, this is a place where black people are at. That's the game. That's the bait and switch. But this New Georgia Project, they apparently claim that they're going to register and mobilize young black voters in Georgia. Why Georgia? Because it's a state that Democrats think they could make competitive. Hillary Clinton lost Georgia by 5 percentage points 4 years ago. In the 2016 election, Donald Trump carried Georgia. Not by a huge margin, but doesn't matter. He still got it. Now you see why they keep giving so much phony lip service to Stacey Abrams and Keisha Applebottom. That's the reason why they keep talking about Georgia so much. Why do you think they focus on Georgia and not Detroit or Chicago? Because they can't carry Michigan, can't carry Illinois. So they're looking at Georgia and thinking maybe we can make some inroads there. And make sure you put some black women out there, because that's the entire point. Hopefully if black women see a couple of house Negroes out there, Keisha Bottoms and Stacey Abrams, if they see them, then maybe black women will go, ooh, I got to vote for them because they got a black woman out front. That's the reason why you have that idiotic, crazy talk about Keisha Applebottom and Stacey Abrams perhaps being on the short list for consideration to be Biden's running mate. Imagine this guy's already in the freaking summer, damn near at August at this point, and he still hasn't figured out who his running mate's going to be. What does that tell you? What that tells you, as far as he's concerned, he's looking and going, God dang it, I really don't want one of any of these people, none of them at all. Can I have a white guy? Can I have a white guy, please? So what that tells you is they can't figure out the right way to manipulate us, because all of the people who they want to use are damaged goods. Stacey Abrams couldn't get black support last year. Kamala Harris, please, we cut her off at the knees. The black media broke her political back. So trotting her out, everything that you criticize about Biden are the exact same things that people ripped Kamala Harris apart about. So putting her on the ticket, they're just going to buy him more trouble. Oh, what he wants is to try to put some white person, or at least a non-black person, on there, but that's the thing. He's caught on the horns of a dilemma. And there are no good options because we've cut his options off. But trying to put their chips on fooling black female voters in Georgia, that strategy may not be as feasible as you think. Galvanizing black female voters with some front Negroes, that strategy doesn't have the effectiveness that it used to. See, it's not enough merely to drive up Trump's negatives. They have to drive up Biden's positives. But what you see is they're doing the exact same failed strategy that they pursued in 2016. The same thing, just more of it. Now you realize why it is that they're reaching out to non-black voters so aggressively. This is an all hands on deck situation. They're trying to pander to and cater to every non-black constituency that they can. Casual racists read white moderates. Immigrants read Hispanics. Asians, what have you, the LGBT, anybody and everybody at all, please. But by the way, just something on a side note. The article points out that the Democrats have been trotting out people like Barack Obama and Killer Mike and Keisha Applebottom to try to speak for the Democrats. And you can tell that that's meant to appeal to the black baby boomers and meant to appeal to the hood rat contingent, because black folks who are actually about politics, we're not taking any cues from Killer Mike. Okay, those of us who are actually about this political thing and paying attention, we're looking at Killer Mike and going, other than being a sock puppet for Bernie Sanders, what the hell has this guy brought to the freaking table? What the hell has he done? He gives lip service, but that's about it. And the more you listen to him, the worse he sounds. When you got black folks in the streets fighting against police brutality, you don't lead with, I'm the son of a police officer. God dang it, you a guaranteed snitch then, Negro. That's what you just said. I mean, who is supposed to be the audience for this propaganda? Obviously not the young black people who are supposed to be voting. They're certainly sure as hell not falling for it. They're not going for this garbage at all. And the Democrats' only response is to basically say, if you don't vote for Joe Biden, you ain't black. Well, Biden, the way things are going, you ain't going to be president. While the white media is trying to put forward the left-wing line of Donald Trump's got all these problems and, we're going to make a horse race out of the 2020 election. Oh, nothing is etched in stone. Trump's already on his back foot. Like I give a damn. He's not promising us anything. The question is, why are you trying to make me think that I should see Biden's presidency as inevitable, so I might as well support him because there's no point in not supporting him? Well, hell, if there's no point in not supporting him, then it also doesn't matter if I don't, does it? Oh, once you get outside of the cozy confines of the Caucasian Nazi network and mayonnaise sandwich nothing but Caucasians, otherwise known as MSNBC. Once you stop listening to their line and you start looking at the rest of the opinions and the rest of the sentiment either online or across the country, what you find is, yeah, while Donald Trump sucks, the problem is people tend to think that Joe Biden sucks more. Politico's article says that a Monmouth University poll released that week found that Biden won voters under 35 by 25 percentage points. But the problem was only a third of young voters viewed Biden favorably versus 59% who viewed him unfavorably. That means Biden's only got about 40% favorability among young voters. Think about that. Now, they do point out that Trump's favorability among young voters is worse, but the thing happens to be, that's why Donald Trump spends so much time hammering his base. He spends so much time trying to keep his base riled up, keep them engaged, throw them plenty of red meat. Because he understands that he needs to solidify his numbers. If he can't grow his base, at the very least, he damn sure better not let even one iota of that base get away from him. He can't afford it. He understands that. But Wall Street Journal and NBC News did a poll, and they found that Biden has less support among black men under age 50 than among black women. Think about that. Biden has less support under black men. His support among black men ain't, but especially those under the age of 50. In other words, if you ain't one of these retirees or ready to retire, one of these Negroes who the only thing you care about is your Social Security check and your Medicaid. If you ain't one of them Negroes who basically was goofing off and doing nothing while Biden was intensifying the war against black people, those Negroes who thought they had better things to do, the older set. If you're not one of these under 50s, and I find that very interesting, they've just qualified what they consider to be the young black vote, under 50. In other words, pretty much Generation X, Millennials, and Generation Z. That's what they're saying. And among that group, black men in particular, Biden's only got about 70% support. So what that tells you is that better than 1 out of 4 black men are looking at Biden and going, what the hell I got to vote for him for? What the hell would I want to do that for? Yes, the automatic, you got to vote for Democrats because black people died. Yeah, because the Democrats let the black people die and didn't do anything to get justice for them after they were killed. Barack Obama wants to know how come nobody showed up to secure his legacy. Go take a look at all those graves, Obama. All those graves of all those black people that you let get killed without any sort of response on your watch. That's what happened to your black support. You let these white supremacists with or without badges kill them all. So that's where your black support went. The Politico article goes on to say to win over young African Americans, Biden might need to acknowledge his past support for strict police tactics and a criminal justice system that's long discriminated against minorities. Think about it. Now look at that. To win over young African Americans, Biden might need to acknowledge his past support for blah, blah, blah. He might need to? Might need to? You think? You think maybe he needs to? Well, we're not entirely sure, but maybe he might have to. He might have to acknowledge it. And look at the way that they word it. His past support for strict police tactics. The bastard gave a speech where he said we did everything but hang people for jaywalking. And that's when he was bragging about Biden's law, aka the 94 crime bill. His support for strict police tactics? No, he gave overwhelming support for unpunished and unchecked police murders of black people. That not strict police tactics. These were not strict tactics. This was directed racial violence at black people. And a criminal justice system that's long discriminated against minorities. No, it was discriminating against black people. There might have been a couple of non-black folks caught up in the drag net, but they usually got much lighter punishment than us. As groups, they definitely got much lighter punishment than us. So no, this was a criminal justice system that singled us out. And notice, though, that they don't point out that Joe Biden put forward the 94 crime bill, which gave the states almost $13 billion and continues to give them money if the states would put the most draconian measures on the books, all of them aimed at black people. Nobody pointing out that black people were being singled out. and that Biden gave the states huge amounts of money if they would change their laws and do it at the local and state level. They don't point that out. They act as if, we're not sure about specifics. We're really not good on specifics. This is the reason why when it comes to your news, you want to be real careful what you read from the white media. You want to make sure that the black media tells you whether or not you're getting the whole story. Because you see how the white media tries to find a way to whitewash it. Let's clean it up. Let's try to make it sound like it's not so bad. Biden's record, including collaborating with segregationists in the Senate and sponsoring the '94 crime bill, emerged as a stumbling block during the primaries. Now, who was it who made that a stumbling block? The Democrats damn sure didn't. They didn't even want to talk about it. It was the black media who made it a thing. It was the black media who put that issue on the map and made it where you had to talk about it and you couldn't escape it. You couldn't get away from it. Terrence Woodbury, a Democratic pollster who apparently has conducted focus groups for Black Lives Matter, he said that young people who did not back Biden in the primary are the same ones who are protesting in the streets right now, who hold his political record as responsible for the pain they are feeling right now. Well, gee, finally, we got a quote that actually makes some sense. Buried in the middle of the article, ain't that something? The people who are out there in the streets, they were the ones who don't back Biden. And they hold his record as being responsible. So what that means is Biden is just as responsible for the uprising as any sort of police brutality or Republican support for the police. Both political parties are responsible. And they're looking at Biden and going, hey, you're one of the people who made this mess that we're having to contend with. Yes, link the uprising directly to the racist policies that Joe Biden helped to pursue and to push. A lot of people like to point out that Donald Trump took out an article in the New York Times in which he wanted to see the innocent Central Park Five given the death penalty for a crime they didn't even commit. And while he was busy trying to get young black men executed for crimes they didn't commit, at the exact same time, Joe Biden was in the Senate passing a law to do it. So you see that both the Democrats and Republicans work hand in hand. Both the Democrats and Republicans are on the exact same page where black people are concerned. Donald Trump was a wealthy private citizen demanding that black people get the death penalty. And Joe Biden was a longtime senator writing a law to make sure that black people get the death penalty. That's a distinction without a difference, folks. And while Mr. Woodbury says that there is some atonement that needs to happen here, well, I'm afraid that the black polity is real light on forgiveness at this time. I'm afraid that we're fresh out of forgiveness these days. No, we're not doing the thing where we have the repentant white supremacist who's going to pretend as if, oh, well, I want you guys to know I acknowledge what's happened in the past, because what they do is the usual game of lie and deny. None of them ever actually takes responsibility for what they've done and say, you know what, that was me. You know what, I wrote these laws knowing exactly how it was going to affect you. Joe Biden's not about to discover religion now. This fool's talking about atonement. When the hell's the last time that Joe Biden took any responsibility for it? He's blaming anyone and everyone else for what he did. Claiming that it was other members of the Senate who apparently wrote the '94 crime bill. Hell, to hear Joe Biden tell it now, he doesn't really know who the hell wrote it. He didn't have anything to do with it. Yeah, back in the 90s, it was Biden's law. He was bragging about what was in there and how much it was just a wish list of everything he ever wanted to be legislation. These days, he had nothing to do with it. Apparently the ghost of Strom Thurmond must have written the thing, huh? That's what the hell he's doing. He's trying to blame everybody else. It was black preachers who wanted it. It was other members of the Senate who wanted it. Surely it couldn't have been anything that he did. This guy is not about to pretend like he's discovered religion and coming from the black community and say, oh, I'm looking to atone. He ain't looking to atone. And no, it's not his creeping senility that's responsible for this. Joe Biden has always lied and denied when he's been cornered. This is the same old Scranton, Pennsylvania two-step. Now, before I go any farther, I think it bears noting that this article was written in early June. That's when the uprising was just gaining major steam and everybody was understanding this is a force to be reckoned with. At that point, you have elected Democrats who are sensing the urgency of young demonstrators. Now, aren't they supposed to be the party of the young? I mean, what does it say about them that these guys were not way ahead of this? What does it say about them that they allowed it to get to this point? No, I'm afraid there is no party of the young. There is no party of the black community. There is no party of the disenfranchised or the downtrodden. And you need to get serious about that. You need to wake up to that reality. Now, Representative Karen Bass of California, who I'm sure has all kinds of disdain and has all kinds of justified contempt for Kamala Harris, she's the head of the Congressional Black Caucus, or as I like to call them, the Black Immigrant Caucus, because they're disproportionately comprised of black immigrants. See, she's gotten laws on the books regarding immigrants, ain't got a damn thing done for black people. She says we need to show people, especially young people, doesn't say young black people, she just says young people, that we are going to act. Acting as soon as possible means the end of June. Well, they blew right past that one now, didn't they? What the hell have they gotten done? For young people. Yeah, we want to make sure everybody understands we're not actually trying to do anything for black people. If we do, if it seems like we have, it's only because they forced us to, but we're not doing it willingly. This is supposed to be the head of the Congressional Black Caucus saying this. The head of the Congressional Black Caucus isn't saying a damn thing about what she's going to do for black people. And if you confronted her on this, she would pull the old Kamala Harris line. Well, when we say young people, that includes black people too. Really? Yeah, because a lot of young people are black people. Gee, you know what that sounds like, Karen Bass? No, I can't imagine. What does it sound like? Sounds like all lives matter. That's what it sounds like. Now, you see what's going on here. Both of the parties are in complete and thorough agreement as to the tactics and deflections and diversions and the weasel words that are going to be used in order to try to deny us our power. They're both in complete agreement. Same vocabulary, same lingo, same terminology, and the same level of belligerence and resistance. Same way that every time it's time to say black, well, we got to shoehorn the LGBT community in there. Black lives matter. Black trans lives matter. Before you know it, the black falls off and it's just trans lives matter. Now, just to show you that this whole focus group thing that they were talking about coming out of Black Lives Matters, that this basically is supposed to be a front or otherwise a surrogate for the black media. Look at what Politico says about it. The Black Lives Matters focus group yielded a recommendation that Democrats brand voting as a power to punish people who were hurting or neglecting their communities, Woodbury said. Well, there's the word punish. Oh, so voting is the power to punish. No, prison is the power to punish. That's what needs to happen here. These white supremacists need to be put in a cage or have a date with a poison needle. But the point is, punishment is not about voting. Voting is supposed to be a means to an end, not an end unto itself. See, this is some of that Killer Mike stupid talk. Y'all want to beat up the cops? Y'all can beat them up at the polls. Y'all can beat them up on election day. No, damn it. What I want is for the bastards to be punished with prison time. See their lives rotting away inside of a cage. Daylight will never be seen by them again. That's what's supposed to be happening here. The polls are merely a means to an end, not an end unto itself. But look what the white media puts there. See, they're trying to appropriate our language. You ain't seen Black Lives Matter talking about power to punish. They ain't talking about punishment. They're on that same old, well, something. Black Lives Matter, they're important too. Only the black media has been saying punish. So what they're doing is they're trying to use our verbiage. And then what's going to happen is the line is going to get switched halfway through. They'll pivot to, well, punish means we're going to hurt them at the polls. Oh, they're going to be so punished when they're out of office and you have some left-wing white supremacists taking their place. Oh, yeah, the next Joe Biden. or the next do-nothing Barack Obama so that they can sign a Blue Lives Matters law. That's what we need, right? But I want you guys to see that the white media hears exactly what it is that we're saying. We have said has pierced the veil. It is broken through. And now they're trying to figure out how to hijack it. Well, we're not going to let that happen. Voting is not how you punish these bastards. Voting is how you get individuals in there who are going to punish them. And the punishment doesn't take the form of you just lose your job. The punishment takes the form of we start by putting you in a cage and any other action we deem necessary in order to ensure that you are no longer a threat to the safety or well-being of black people in America. That's punishment. That's punishing people. Voting is the power to punish. Nah, we ain't falling for no weasel words. We're going to be taking years off of their lives in a cage, and we're going to be taking money out their pockets directly. This is not about trying to favor one arm of white supremacy over the other. This is about favoring and empowering ourselves. This is what's happening right now. You have a whole lot of denial going on because they understand that once black people's interests are at the forefront, if they're not able to get us off that issue, the problem happens to be the nation is going to be forced to change. And stopping black people from having our empowerment is job one for both of the major parties, not just the Republicans. Biden's problem happens to be not that he cannot see what needs to be done, it's that he is hell-bound and determined that he's not going to do it. Because that is the purpose that both of the major parties serve. The crisis is not about the economic downturn. They're not scared of an economic downturn because poor people are a disempowered people. They're not scared of the epidemic because a sick people, a dying people, are also a people who are not going to be in a condition to revolt. And their problem is not that people don't like police violence against black people. It's that black people have taken steps to make sure that they punish the police and stop the violence. That's the problem that they have. The big problem here happens to be black empowerment. That's the actual crisis. If black people stop being poor, stop having inferior health care, and stop being the subject of constant attack by a gang of armed thugs who the state has sanctioned to carry out directed violence against us, that's the actual crisis. The crisis is not any sort of store windows being broken. Poverty is not the crisis. Black power, wealth, and influence. That's the crisis. And the country stands on the verge of that crisis coming to be reality right now. This is what has to be stopped. They need a firewall. And apparently, Jim Crow Joe Biden is going to be their firewall of choice if they can make it work. But the problem is black folks, especially young black voters, the under 50 crowd, they're not taking the bait. And you don't have enough black elderly people. You ain't got enough of the black church crowd. You don't have enough black retirees, soon-to-be retirees, hood rats, dusty dudes, bootlicks, and fraternity sorority punks in order to prop this clown up. You don't have enough of them. Oh, you can give Joy Reid, forget about giving Joy Reid a daily show. Hell, you can give Joy Reid her own channel if you want. All stupid all the time. That won't help. Biden knows exactly what it is that he must do. His advisors know what they must do. And everything that they say and every act that they commit is geared toward averting that necessary action. This is why, even in the face of disaster, you see that the white media and the Democrats, they still can't stop attacking us. Problematic. Cynical. Yeah, this is what you say about the people whose votes you claim to want. After 500 years, they are patently unsuited to compete. That's the problem that the people who America was set up to serve have. That's the problem that these white supremacists have. White supremacy was set up in order to guarantee that those classified as white would never have to compete. But simply giving those people goodies, giveaways, and guarantees, that's not sufficient. You also have to ensure that black people cannot compete under any circumstances, and that requires constant daily action. You can't just go ahead and break black people's legs one time because those legs will mend, they'll get back to their feet and be a problem for you. That's the lesson that they learned from Reconstruction. Black people left to their own devices would very soon not merely be competing, but surpassing the white majority. They understand that. And so that being the case, we got to make sure that the racial order put in place 400 plus years ago remains in place. And that means black people cannot be allowed to have any sort of resources. They must be kept under constant attack. They must always be the subjects of unrelenting violence, political violence, economic violence, physical violence, you name it. That's what's going on. This is why the white supremacists are so hyper obsessed with black people. It's why they talk about us all the time, why they scheme and plot against us all the time, why they attack us all the time, why they think about us every waking moment. It doesn't matter if you got some punk in the chambers of Congress or you got some sawed-off white supremacist runt on a video game forum. They always are attacking black people because they understand that their position can never be safe and secure unless ours is unsafe and insecure. They are constantly paranoid about us because they have seen on the few occasions when they've had to actually go head up against us, they lose. And they don't just lose, they lose spectacularly. They lose immediately. They are not scared of the coronavirus. As far as they're concerned, the coronavirus is a solution to the problem. They are not scared of an economic downturn. Mass poverty and people out in the streets, as far as they're concerned, that's a solution to the problem. Take a look at California and Skid Row if you want proof of that. You also have the same tent cities in San Francisco. This is supposed to be the most liberal state in the country, or so we were told, and yet they have no problem setting up an economic conveyor belt meant to take black people out of whatever economic opportunity they might have and deposit them on the streets to die. And that's just what the Democrats do with the Republicans. They say, well, we prefer that we not even see black people. So let's go ahead and put all of our money into building the biggest, baddest prisons we can. Texas, Mississippi. Let's go ahead and make sure the prison industrial complex is on point. And we're just going to have these Negroes warehoused because we can't even stand looking at them. This election happens to be a potential bellwether of the general overall trend. But I'll tell you right now, I think that the die is already cast in that regard. You see, even if the white media does happen to convince enough people who have otherwise been sitting on the sidelines that maybe they ought to vote for Biden, or at least if they can depress or otherwise demoralize enough Republicans so that the left arm of white supremacy can have their preferred white supremacist mouthpiece in the White House. Even if they manage to do that, the problem happens to be when Biden gets in there, it ain't going to be like Obama. He ain't going to be getting the kind of free ride Obama got. That's just going to make matters worse for him because he's going to be having black folks constantly in his face saying, okay, you got the White House. Now you have no excuse for not coming up with them tangibles. Now you got no excuse at all. So the thing about it is, while it is important that the Democrats not be able to pull off their little ploy of we're going to do an end run around the black vote. We're going to try to invalidate the black vote. That'll be a tactic that basically makes them feel good for 5 minutes and then falls apart the next. I am far more concerned about our political cohesion and solidarity than I am about whatever results come out of the tail end of the latest white supremacist pretend phony election. It is what we are doing that's the most important thing, not them. Don't believe it? Look at what's happened the last month and a half. Look at the legislation that's been passed. Look at the thugs with badges bowing on their knees. And then ask yourself, how many elections did you need to win in order to accomplish that? Oh, Politico is right indeed. Except they got the tense wrong. It's not young black voters could break Biden. Young black voters have broken Biden. And the Democrats are desperately trying to figure out how to put this septuagenarian white supremacist piece of trash back together again. That's probably what went wrong with this idiot. When he saw that the black folks were breaking him in half, what passes for his mind just snapped. And he's been a blithering idiot ever since. If I could just get some votes. Can you imagine what the hell the damn presidential debates are going to be like with this blubbering moron on stage? I mean, Donald Trump, when he talks, he doesn't say anything intelligent. And when Biden talks, he won't be saying anything intelligible. But it will just stand as a very stark reminder to everyone, in case anybody was still in denial, neither one of these idiots are offering anything to black people. And as the Democrats are seeing, it's the black vote that counts. You're not going to be getting away with any empty pablum about sensitivity and we need to be more caring and loving. Man, to hell with all that. We're not looking for any sort of acceptance from any ethnic group in the society. We're not trying to be friends with anyone. We're not trying to get people to hug us. We have no codependency issues, so this is not a matter of, oh, can I be at your movie theater, or can I be in your school, can I get you to like me and pat me on the head and tell me you love black folks? We ain't worrying about that. Give me my tangibles, and I ain't concerned about a damn thing else. That's what the election issue is. It's about tangibles. And as far as Joe Biden, well, he's already dug his own political grave, and we're sitting here. He's got one leg in that grave and the other leg dangling. But the Democrats understand that this is about far bigger problems than just Biden's inability to con the black vote. He ain't trying to connect. You can just take that NECT off the back of connect. Only thing he wants is to con the black vote, not connect to the black vote. Well, the con's not working. The black vote is not scared either of police, Republican racism, or of not having the approval of the dominant society. We're not scared of them not liking us. This ain't about them liking us. But you can tell that Joe Biden happens to be so discombobulated and so confused. Does anybody even know what the hell his political slogan is? What's his slogan, huh? Does he even have a slogan? Well, given the fact that he's lost his previous 2 bids to be president, born to lose might be a good slogan this time around. But no matter what Joe Biden or Donald Trump's political slogans are for 2020, the only one that matters is the political slogan of this newly reinvigorated and newly redetermined black political movement. And our slogan is no tangibles, no vote, no kidding.